This first section of an elementary introduction to the Wolfram language describes basically how the Wolfram language operates, starting with elementary arithmetic. This input, for example, represents adding two numbers. On this desktop computer or on the web, the calculation is done by pressing the Enter key while holding down the Shift key. On a mobile device, the calculation is typically done by tapping a button on the screen. The result is displayed below the input. Addition can also be done for larger numbers. Multiplication can be entered with an asterisk character. Multiplication can also be indicated by simply leaving space between the numbers. The display of this input shows a multiplication operator between the numbers. This input was entered by simply typing a space between the numbers, and the multiplication operator was inserted automatically by the system to make it clear that the input will be treated as multiplication. Subtraction is entered with a minus sign. This input subtracts two numbers. This input shows dividing two numbers with division shown by the / character. Another common operation is raising a number to a power, which is shown with a caret character, which is the keyboard character that looks like an angle pointed up. This input gives the number 4 raised to the power 3. 4 raised to the power 3 is the same as 4 multiplied by itself 3 times. Numbers can have an almost unlimited number of digits, usually as big as you want, until the computer runs out of memory. For example, this calculation gives a result which is a relatively large number. It's reasonable to be cautious of calculations with an enormous number of digits, however, since calculations with an enormous number of digits can take a lot of time and use a lot of computer memory. Parentheses can be used to group operations together, just as in traditional mathematical notation. This input, for example, adds 2 plus 2 and then multiplies the result by 9. As in the earlier example, the multiplication in that input can be indicated by a space, and actually, since there is no ambiguity, it isn't even necessary to include the space. This input, for example, with no space between the 9 and the parentheses, also multiplies the sum by 9. That's the end of the examples for this section. Here is the programming vocabulary that came up in the examples, but the main purpose of this section is really just to describe how the Wolfram language operates and how to get a sequence of inputs and outputs. Here are some of the exercises from this section. These exercises are all relatively easy. For example, considering exercise 1.3, multiply the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One way to do that is by simply typing in the numbers 1 through 5 with spaces between the numbers to indicate multiplication.